Hello, everybody. It is June 4th, 2021. Today's afternoon devotional Bible study. We will be reading through Ezekiel chapter 22. But first, we're going to be opening up the devotional book, Jesus is Calling, to read through today's devotional. June 4th, Jesus is Calling. Welcome challenging times as opportunities to trust me. You have me beside you and my spirit within you. So no set of circumstances is too much for you to handle. While the path before you is dotted with difficulties, beware of measuring your strength against those challenges. That calculation is certain to riddle you with anxiety. Without me, you wouldn't make it past the first hurdle. The way you walk through demanding days is to grip my hand tightly and stay in close communication with me. Let your thoughts and spoken words be richly favored with trust and thankfulness. Regardless of the day's problems, I can keep you in perfect peace as you stay close to me. And that was inspired by 3 different sections of the Bible. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. James 1:2. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. Then lastly, you will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts you. Isaiah 26:3. That last verse is an interesting one. You will keep perfect peace with him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts you. I don't know why. That's an interesting one. But yeah, that idea of welcoming challenging times, that seems odd, and it seems contradictory in a lot of different ways. But it reminded me of, I watched Film Theory, and they just had one about Wall-E, and is it possible that he is the devil because he led people out of paradise by offering them a plant, kind of like, something from the Garden of Eden, the fruit, right? So they were wondering if it was kind of that kind of a theory. But one of the things that he talked about was one of the keys to happiness is having a challenging job. And that's something that I think is important, because so many of us, we just want our lives to be comfortable and challenge free. But if we get to a place where our lives are challenge free, that is a sure way to end up depressed and to end up numb. Challenge, weirdly, is an important part of happiness. So that idea of welcoming challenges, it seems counterintuitive, but it's actually, those challenges might be part of the key to your happiness. So, an interesting thought that, that I think ties in with that devotional. So, we're going to start opening up our Bibles to Ezekiel chapter 22. Hello, Sarah. Welcome. And I opened up my Bible, then closed it, and I threw out my bookmark, but I still held it open. So I encourage you to read with me. Ezekiel is spelled Ezekiel, Ezekiel, and we'll be reading through chapter 2. I am reading the New Living Translation. Just so you know what you're reading, on Bible Gateway or the Bible app, you can change which translation it's in. Because I know a lot of times it can be difficult to read along in a different translation. This first section here foreshadows something in Matthew. So once we read through the whole book, we'll jump back to that. But the sins of Jerusalem, chapter 22 of Ezekiel. Now, this message came to me from the Lord. Son of man, you are ready to judge. Son of man, are you ready to judge Jerusalem? Are you ready to judge this city of murderers? Publicly denounce their detestable sins and give her this message from the sovereign Lord. O city of murderers, doomed and damned. City of idols, filthy and foul. You are guilty because of the blood you have shed. You are defiled because of the idols you have made. Your day of destruction has come. You have reached the end of your years. I will make you an object of mockery throughout the world. O infamous city, filled with confusion, you will be mocked by people far and near. Every leader in Israel who lives within your walls is bent on murder. Fathers and mothers are treated with contempt. Foreigners are forced to pay for protection. Orphans and widows are wronged and oppressed among you. You despise my holy things and violate my Sabbath days of rest. People accuse others falsely and send them to their death. You are filled with idol worshippers and people who do obscene things. Men sleep with their fathers' wives and force themselves on women who are menstruating. Within your walls live men who commit adultery with their neighbors' wives, who defile their daughter-in-laws, who rape their own sisters. There are hired murderers, lone racketeers, and extortioners everywhere. They will never even think of me and my commands, says the sovereign Lord. But now I clap my hands in indignation over the dishonest gain and bloodshed. How strong and courageous will you be in my day of reckoning? I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do what I said. I will scatter you among the nations and purge you of your wickedness. And when I have dishonored among the nations because of you, you will know that I am the Lord's refining furnace. Then, this message came to me from the Lord. Son of man, the people of Israel are worthless slag that remains after silver is smelted. They are the dross that is left over, the useless mixture of copper, tin, iron, and lead. So tell them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you are worthless slag, I will bring you to my crucible in Jerusalem. Just as silver, copper, iron, lead, and tin are melted down in a furnace, I will melt you down in the heat of my fury. I will gather you together and blow the fire of my anger upon you. And you will melt like silver in a fierce heat. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have poured out my fury upon you. The sins of Israel's leaders. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee, and we're going to continue from verse 23. Again, a message came to me from the Lord. Son of man, give the people of Israel this message. In the day of my indignation, you will be like a polluted land, a land without rain. Your princes plot conspiracies just as lions stalk their prey. They devour innocent people, seizing treasure and extorting wealth. They make many widows in the land. Widows and windows are two very different things. Your priests have violated my instructions and defiled my holy things. They make no distinction between what is holy and what is not. And they do not teach my people the differences between what is ceremonially clean and unclean. They disregard my Sabbath day so that I am dishonored among them. Your leaders are like wolves who tear apart their victims. They actually destroy people's lives for money. And your prophets cover up for them, announcing false visions and making lying predictions. They say my message is from the sovereign Lord, when the Lord hasn't spoken a single word to them. Even common people oppress the poor, rob the needy, and deprive foreigners of justice. I look for someone who might rebuild the wall of righteousness that guards the land. I search for someone to stand in the gap in the wall so I wouldn't have to destroy the land, but I found no one. So now I will pour out my fury on them, consuming them with fire of my anger, and I will heap on their heads the full penalty for all their sins. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. So there's quite a bit in here. Historical, motivational. There's a lot in here. But first, Ezekiel 22, 1-5. Now this message came to me from the Lord. Son of man, are you ready to judge Jerusalem? Are you ready to judge this city of murderers? Publicly denounce her detestable sins and give her this message from the sovereign Lord. O city of murderers, doomed and damned, city of idols, filthy and foul. You are guilty because of the blood you have shed. You are defiled because of the idols you have made. Your day of destruction has come. You have reached the end of your years. I will make you an object of mockery throughout the world. O infamous city, filled with confusion, you will be mocked by people far and near. God says repeatedly throughout the book of Ezekiel that he will judge his people for their evil ways. He will cut them down. And John the Baptist is pointing to the arrival of Jesus when he says, even now the axe of God's judgment is poised, ready to sever the roots of the trees. Yes, every tree that does not produce good fruit will be chopped down and thrown into the fire. Matthew 3:10. That feels like it's more like the refining fire, but whatever. That's what my Bible said it's related to. So once again, we are seeing the sins of the people and why God is stepping in to interfere, and he's stepping in to purify. And that purification process, it's going to get messy. It's going to have results where they all go away, but God knows that they will come back together eventually, that the kingdom that he's bringing is going to be a greater kingdom that goes all over the world. It's also kind of foreshadowing how, yes, these detestable things are happening. The siege is going to happen. It's going to spread you out everywhere. But then these ones that the remnant are going to know that, yes, he is God, and the message and the hope and the love of God is going to spread even further. And this is a painful purification that's going to happen. So a couple days ago, we talked about how they were sacrificing their children. Now we find out that a lot of the women are getting raped, that, father-in-laws and like son-in-laws and mother-in-laws, like basically there's a bunch of really deprived things happening within family units. And that stuff sadly does happen today, but it's frowned upon. It's not looked at as something good, and there's support and help and ways out of those situations now. And if you're caught up in one of these awful situations, if you were in town in Orangeville, the family transition place can be a safe place for you. Before I started working for YFC, while I was still in high school, I actually spent a little bit of time working there. I was one of two males that were working there. And it was only a short term, like 4 month contract type deal. Um, but that I know can be a safe place and a place where some people have gone. If you're under a certain age, there is Choices Youth Shelter, which also can be a safe place for a certain amount of time if you're caught in one of those awful situations. But today you have options. Back then they didn't. And God came in and he's like, okay, you are representing me and you are defiling and making your family extremely unsafe. They have no options. It's now not only is it's commonplace. You're killing your children, you're raping your children. The family unit is just completely broken up. And then there's this refining fire and this refining furnace. And well, sorry, something else that came to my head as I was talking there is a lot of times making those steps to kind of purify or to become who we want to be can be extremely challenging and can be painful. For me, I was in a very toxic relationship around the time that I started following God, and God told me I had to get out of that relationship, and it was painful, and it brought me to tears for a couple days, and I was vulnerable. I didn't know where else to go, and I went to my buddy's place at like midnight one night, and I just cried on his couch because I just, yeah. But it was the right thing to do, and God exposed to me how toxic that relationship was, and it was, are you going to stay here or are you going to follow me? I got something better for you. And it was tough and it was painful and it was hard. A lot of times making those right choices when we're just so caught up in sin, we know we're not where we want to be and we have to make those steps forward. And you know, I've had addiction come to my mind a lot while reading through the book of Ezekiel and the difficulty of it. And there's that reminder that God doesn't want to destroy you. No matter what your sin is, no matter how much you're caught up in it, he wants you to turn and live. And the reality of the difficulty of that situation, I don't think is lost on God, especially as we're going through this book. He understands that struggle and he wants to reach out and he wants to help you. But it is going to be a challenge. And that challenge, the greater the struggle, the greater the triumph. That's a line from one of my favorite movies, Butterfly Circus. Gonna kind of go back to a couple different things in here too. In the section, the sins of Israel's leaders, there is this point, like explanation point, and I feel like it's what's driving a lot of society today. Verse 27, part B. I'll read the whole thing. You leaders are like wolves who tear apart your victims. Period. This is the part that really jumped out at me. They actually destroy people's lives for money. Or they actually destroy people's lives for money. Like, it's the explanation point, and it just stands out there. Like, it's, how can someone that seems to be following me destroy someone's life for money? Like, no. And yet I see that all the time. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, selling out was seen as a bad thing. Now it's embraced. And sometimes a lot of the church sells out. There's a lot of Christian culture that I'm not a fan of. There was this one book that got made into a movie about this little kid going to heaven in a dream. And yes, it was a beautiful, inspiring story. But the kid made it up. It was proved that he made it up. And yet it's still heralded as like this amazing, true, epic story. It's giving people hope based off of a lie. And it's a feel-good, yay, 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 isn't life great type of story, but it's based off a lie and it's hollow and it'll fall apart. If you're putting your faith into that lie, it'll fall apart. And as we're reading through the book of Ezekiel, life, life is difficult, life is messy. Following Jesus can be messy. This book is a lot about consequences and calling out sin directly. Hey, this is what you're doing. Hey, this is what you're doing. Um, and like, yeah, there's a lot of things that are jumping out here that are just like, and just I almost read it as shock that actually they actually destroy people's lives for money. Like that's why would they ever do that? Life is so much more valuable than money, but you're literally destroying lives for money. Yeah, no wonder I need to take you guys all out. Like with the sacrificing of children, the willingness to destroy people's lives to gain a dollar, the selfish ambition that's going on there. And then you see the selfish ambition as well with the whole like, you know, the rape and the all of that stuff that's going on. The purification, that sword of purification that I talked about too in the Garden of Eden yesterday. It's going to be painful. It's going to be good, but like this is one of those parts that I felt a little bit convicted of when I prayed. 29, verse 29, even common people oppress the poor, rob the needy, and deprive foreigners of justice. And you might be going like, Jeremy, how does that make you feel bad? There are times in the before times, before COVID and after COVID, there's that like Walmart. When I buy from Walmart, I am pretty sure I am helping to support some sort of oppression and mistreatment of a human somewhere along the lines, contributing to a lot of the global climate costs because, you know, things to get shipped to the Orangeville Walmart, there's trucks, planes, boats, like there's so much other stuff that goes on, and a lot of underpaid, underappreciated, poor working conditions. And you know, I'm like, oh yeah, but like everybody does it because it's the sustainable option for a lot of us, the option that helps us to survive. But it's kind of as a result of us, our leaders, getting there. And you know, robbing the needy and depriving foreigners of justice. That also just, it feels like we're in this time right now. So yeah, it's as crazy as things are in this chapter. I find it pretty relatable. Yeah, there's a couple other things too. That whole first part, I was watching an interview on the Russell Howard Hour, which is kind of like the Daily Show but British. He's a stand-up comedian that I really like, but he'll interview some people, and he's interviewing someone that was doing a documentary, kind of exposing the adult film industry. And what they said here, like from verse 10 onwards, like they had to start labeling their things, their videos, with things like that, with men sleep with their fathers' wives and force them on women who are menstruating, with your walls live within your walls live men who commit adultery with their neighbors' wives, who defile their daughter-in-laws, who rape their own sisters. Like, and that was like where they were at, where they had to start naming their stuff in order to get people to consume their video over others. And the guy that was interviewing was like, yeah, the people in the industry are like, yeah, this is screwed up, but that's what we have to do. And like the people making it don't like it, but it's what's selling, and it's just like, it's weird and it's convicting. Um, and I'm really sad that that was so relatable of a chapter. Um, but yeah, all right. Let us pray. AJC, awesome Jesus Christ, I thank you so much for all the ways that you love us, that you guide us, that you direct us. I thank you for knowing that bigger plan because you wanted everyone to be open to following you. And Jerusalem's depravity, how they sacrificed their children, how they were raping each other, how they were destroying people's lives for money, how they were oppressing the poor and the needy, not just the leaders, but the common people who saw the leaders doing it and was like, well, if they're doing it, then it's okay if I do it. They lost compassion. They were driven by self-interest. Lord, help us to have compassion for others, to not worship money, to not be willing to sacrifice somebody else for a good payday. So many of our movies and action movies nowadays are people going like, oh yeah, we'll do this for this much money, and oh well, more of a cut for us when somebody dies, and just this idea of money being worth more than somebody's life. Help us to see past that lie and help us to have eyes like what you can see. Help us to see like you see. And Lord, if we're caught up as a victim in anything that we talked about today, help us to find those ways out. And there's plenty of ways out of these scenarios today where we are. Help us to find someone safe to talk with so that we don't have to go through that alone. Help us, Lord. Help us not to be victims anymore, but to find victory in you. And yes, that first step is going to be challenging. The second step and the third step are going to be challenging, but help with each and every step. Help that realization on what's happening. Help with that realization on what to do next and how to get out. And Lord, if we are committing or contributing to these detestable acts happening, help us to see the error of our ways and help us to correct our ways and to seek forgiveness and to make amends and to make things right. To walk with and care for the victims in ways that help the victims and not ourselves. Whether that's a parent turning a blind eye to an abusive situation, help that blind eye not be turned anymore and let them stand up for their child. Whether it's contributing by watching things online, whether it's contributing by supporting this or supporting that. Help us to find alternatives. Help to guide us and direct us in ways that don't deprive and oppress, but to liberate and free and help bring life to the fullest. Help us not to be whatever that waste is, to be thrown into the fire and melted away. That is a cool word, though. I like that word. Now I'm drawing a blank on what that word is. So, thank you, Lord. Help us, guide us. And I thank you that life is messy and challenges happen. But with the greater the struggle, the greater the triumph. Those who have been forgiven of much will be just that much more thankful. I thank you for pulling us out of our pits of depravity and giving us a glimpse and inviting us into a life of hope, love, and compassion with you, Lord. A full life with meaning and purpose. A full life where we're not doing things alone, but we're doing things with you and in the community of God, in the kingdom of God, in the family of God, in your family, in your kingdom, and of your people all over the world. Thank you. All right. Amen. I actually got a little bit teary there while I was praying. Not expected. That word that I was thinking of, I know I've looked it up before, slag. I like that word, slag. I don't know why. I don't know. I remember I had to look it up because I didn't know what it meant. And that verse basically describes exactly what it was. Well, yeah. Anyways, thank you. Once again, a bit of a warning for tomorrow, as it's going to be a little bit more sexually explicit. Today we talked about some not great things. And tomorrow it goes into a bit of detail as metaphor for, once again, what the people of Jerusalem, what it's like that they've done. And it uses a parable that is, I don't know, it might trip some people up. So there's a warning there. Yeah, have a fantastic day. Thank you once again for praying for my knee. I am icing it. Last night was really, really bad. Today I'm waking up and it's not too bad. So thank you for the prayers. I ask for continual prayer for that, for healing. And hopefully you guys get a chance to have some sun and you find time to relax and pray outside of this time. But thank you for spending this time with me. Have a fantastic day. God bless.